My name is Bill Thomas. I'm a writer, consulting producer, and now podcaster. I am now trying to use my experience as the brother of a murder victim to help other victims of violent crime. I'm working on a book on the unsolved Colonial Parkway murders, and I'm the co-administrator of the Colonial Parkway murders Facebook group together with Kristin Dilley.
My name is Kristin Dilley. I'm a writer, a researcher, a teacher, and a victims advocate, as well as the social media manager and co-administrator for the Colonial Parkway Murders Facebook page with my partner in crime, Bill Thomas.
My co-host Kristin Dilley and I, as part of our celebration of the first 100 episodes of Mind Over Murder, have gone back and taken a listen to some of the early episodes with various guests that we thought were particularly worth a second listen. In this series of bonus episodes, we're going to be going back and taking a listen to some of our podcasts earlier in our 100-episode history. This week, we feature a couple of episodes with CSI writer-producer David Rambo. We hope you enjoy these editions of Mind Over Murder mixed in with our new episodes currently covering the Colonial Parkway murders. Thanks, as always, for your support. It's very helpful if you listen to episode 1 and episode 2 of our terrific conversation with David. As you start episode 3, we're at a transition point where William Peterson, the former star of CSI, has just left the show, and David Rambo, as one of the writer-producers, is telling us about how the show came to bring on noted actor Lawrence Fishburne to join the cast. So, William Peterson leaving and Lawrence Fishburne arriving. We hope you enjoy the conversation.
And when Billy left and the calls started going out, Lawrence Fishburne's name came up, and we just thought, yeah, we've got to get Fishburne.
Yeah, absolutely. And also then that clearly showed that we went with an African-American guy and a completely different style in terms of his approach. And so it did kind of provide a clear line of demarcation from one character to the next.
Yeah. And the show had a different tone almost with Lawrence. And I loved writing for Lawrence. We had sort of met through mutual friends before this, and I really wanted to work with him. But the character that we wrote initially turned out to evolve a lot, not quite be the character that he ended up playing. And I think after 2.5 seasons, he was ready to move on as well. And the show changed as well, too. The showrunners changed. You know, these things happen. And you go down the new path. It's still CSI. You're still going to hear The Who singing, "Who Are You?"
Right.
And your blood's going to race a little, and you're going to have a great story.
Yeah.
But it did change.
And it probably needed to. And you can't stay mired in one thing. And obviously, when an actor makes a decision, particularly a key player like the folks we're talking about, it does present an opportunity and a challenge, I would imagine, for the writer-producers. It
does. You want to serve the show, but you also really want to use the best gifts that your actor is bringing, whether it's, a man or a woman, whoever. You really want to draw the best out of them. I'm sad that I didn't get to work with Ted Danson. I got to meet him at the 300th episode party. I was invited to that even though I wasn't on the show anymore. And I spent practically the whole party sitting talking with Ted Danson. I really wish I could have written for him. He's delightful.
He really was. I mean, he's a very different actor than Billy or Lawrence Fishburne is, but the tone of the show was really different, but it worked really well.
I also think the country had changed in those, 15 years. I think one of the reasons CSI was a hit was that it debuted right around the time of 9/11. And as a country, we were very hungry for answers to the unimaginable and to bad guys getting caught in a kind of a new way. We all felt that the game had changed. And I think the audiences were ready. As a culture, we were ready for a new form of good guy, bad guy storytelling. I think that had a lot to do with the success of the show. But by the time Billy left and then Fishburne, the country was different. And Ted Danson was kind of the perfect guy to lead the crime lab in the mood of the country at that time. It's called popular entertainment. popular culture. You have to respond to what's going on in the world.
Even though you didn't have the ripped from the headlines claim that other long-running series like Law & Order had, you were drawing a lot from real-life stories and things that were happening both scientifically and in terms of what was happening with crime, not necessarily high-profile cases, but things that were going on in the real-life version of CSI.
Exactly. And that was fun. You know, we had kind of a story watch. If you saw a good real life story in the news, we would quickly send like a link to the story over to our executive at Bruckheimer Television to say, we want to reserve this story. Don't let Miami or New York do it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
well,
yeah, that's right. Sharp elbows now.
Exactly. Well, we think the other shows had people up through the night looking at stories, because I cannot tell you how many times we heard, oh, Miami already got
They got that.
Or New York's reserved this. And we was, damn, because we tried to rip from the headlines, but the headlines are being ripped away from us.
Taking advantage of the time difference, and then they get there just before you guys.
I don't know how they did it.
But I like that you guys did have some very topical episodes. The one I was watching last night, Coup de Grace, about racial profile. Was a shooting racially motivated? Was it not? I thought that was very topical, because that has always been sort of a hot button issue here. It was interesting to see a very different take on that concept. I really enjoyed that episode.
Oh, I'm so glad. That was a bit of a tough sell, because it's the first time I think that the show touched on the wire of race. Mm-hmm. And Lawrence, I told Lawrence we were going to do the story. That was ripped from the headlines. That was drawn from a real life case in New York. An off-duty African-American cop in plain clothes, he's off-duty, was shot by a uniformed cop who was white. Just thinking, well, one presumes the white cop thought, black guy in this neighborhood, this hour, not good, told him to freeze and drive. And the guy was saying, whoa, I'm a cop. He wasn't complying with the command, and he was shot. So I told Lawrence we were going to do the story, and Lawrence said, I'll reserve any thoughts I have until I see the script. And I thought, okay, the bar is very high. One of our real life CSIs turned writer producers is Richard Catalani, and he's a ballistic expert by training, a serologist who became a ballistics expert. He helped me with the story. I'm very proud of the episode. It's the only thing I've ever written for television that's been awarded for the writing. It got from the Television Academy, got something called a Program of Distinction Award.
Very impressive.
Oh, I'm very proud of it. We found a study that from Michigan where they ran cops of all races through simulated situations.
Right.
That were, I don't know if you've ever been in one of those, but they're terrifying. It's the real thing. You think you're being shot.
Right.
The way they stage them. And the study proved that race was a factor only in like 2%. And I don't want to give the wrong number. I'm giving this as an example. But of some very low percentage of the cases, it was more about the situation.
And the fear and the adrenaline and the surprise.
Exactly.
And then a lot of these situations are happening in the dark. Things happen, and things happen fast, and people make judgments thinking their lives are on the line. Whether it turns out they are or they are not at that moment, they think they're under attack or whatever.
That we have a scene in not the layout room, in the break room, where it's the only time in any of my scripts where Marg Helgenberger asked if her character could not say something that was kind of profound. I had Catherine saying, listen, we all do things that reveal ourselves in moments of stress. I mean, in traffic, you say things, you see somebody, you say things you'd never say in other situations, something like that. And she said, I just don't want Catherine to be thought of that way. I don't. And that was fine. I changed the line. But it was really interesting how touching on race revealed so much. And now that we had an African-American leading man on the show, number one on the call sheet. It was the unspoken became spoken. And it was a pretty profound experience for the whole cast, the whole crew.
What did Lawrence Fishburne say to you then when he saw the script? Did he feel like the tone was right? Lawrence
said nothing. He just did it. The only thing which I took as a high compliment, he looked at me at one point. It was one speech he had to give where he quoted that study. And he looked at me and raised an eyebrow. I said, this is real, right? And I said, this is real. I can show you the article. He said, I don't need to see the article. If you say it's real, it's real.
Yeah, so there was a trust there in terms of your integrity, and he was willing to take you at your word.
He's a big motorcycle rider, and he liked me because I wrote an episode that put him on motorcycles for most of it.
He was like, wow, this is cool. This is almost like not working.
Yep. Hog heaven.
I thought you were going to say it's because you were a fellow motorcycle enthusiast.
Oh, hardly.
Well, we described you at the top.
My brother is. Yeah, my brother repairs and deals in motorcycles in North Carolina. He's a real biker.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
but that was not an interest you shared with Mr. Fishburne.
No.
So what's next for you now? This, I know we've done this really fun deep dive on CSI, and Kristin could definitely keep going. But let's talk about what are you working on now besides relaxing and staying safe at home?
I'm very fortunate. I spent most of last year working on a show that will debut on Netflix, I think in September. It's called Tiny Pretty Things. I'd say it's about as far from the crime lab as you can get, but there actually is a crime at the heart of it. It's set in an elite ballet academy, and it's a gorgeous show based on a novel by the same title. This is created by Michael McLennan, and it's set in an elite ballet academy in Chicago. We have an incredibly talented young cast who are fantastic dancers, wonderful actors. We did 10 episodes. It was a huge, huge production, and it's just gorgeous, and I'm really proud of it. That'll premiere, I think, in September. And while we're waiting for that to premiere, I've joined the last season of a TNT show called Claws, which has crime in every episode. That is such fun. In fact, we were shooting that in New Orleans until we were shut down from the pandemic.
So you'll be heading back once things get better?
Yeah, we're actually still working on the writing. The writers are meeting virtually every day and still writing the last couple of scripts. So I'm one of the lucky writers that still has his job, at least for a few more weeks.
Yeah. The physical production takes place in New Orleans. Yeah,
doubling for Florida.
Interesting.
It's a fun series. The old episodes are on Hulu, and then the new ones are on TNT.
TNT Claws. We'll check that out. Claws like cat claws, or
Yep.
Okay. Don't put your legal hat on. Put your animal claws hat on.
It's about a bunch of manicurists that are washing money and running drugs for the Dixie Mafia.
Well, hey,
fantastic!
Wow,
it sounds great.
Just watch the pilot; you'll be hooked. It's just great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Money laundering's done very well in the last couple of years on Netflix.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And I'm still writing plays and still working in the theater, which is my great love, and, anxious to see what's next.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, at the risk of introducing a sensitive subject, I had read a couple of years ago about this series on Ronald Reagan that you were working on. Did that ever happen? Because I don't remember it.
No, it hasn't happened. It was developed with USA Network. Reagan's daughter, Patty, is a close friend, wonderful writer. I never wanted to write about Ronald Reagan. I love politics. I remembered Reagan as the president who drove my father into bankruptcy and 5 foreclosures and let all my friends die of AIDS.
Right.
I just did not get the guy.
He was not at the top of your list of favorite presidents.
No. But he was somebody's father. In fact, he was father to 4 people, really 5. He and Jane Wyman had a daughter who died only a few hours after she was born. But he, regardless of what you think of him and his politics and his ascent, there was a man there. There was a father and a husband, and Patty, who had her own problems with him politically and otherwise, helped me see the part of her father that she loved. Patty was asked to do a miniseries, executive produce a miniseries about her father's life, his early life before the White House.
Right.
And she said no, she didn't want to, and she's going to write anything about her family, it wouldn't be a television series. And then they said, well, what if David Rambo wrote it? And given that we were friends from an earlier project. She said, well, that would be different.
Yeah.
So we took it to USA. They wanted to do a biography. See, I don't want to spend too much time on this. It's a project that never got off the ground, but they wanted to do a biographical miniseries, and they ended up doing Evel Knievel, which I think will air in the fall. I'm not sure, but I turned in great material. We'll see if it ever sees
so at
the light
this
of a screen.
Well, I was talking to Kristin about this. It sounded so interesting, but I said, boy, even for television, this is taking a really long time. I said, I'm not sure if this program is still in development or not, but it was a cool idea because of the combination of Patty Reagan and yourself. I thought this could be really, really interesting. So it's sadly unlikely to ever see the light of day?
I don't know. It's not in my hands at this point. It's in the hands of other producers who are very committed to getting it on the air. I think it would be interesting, controversial, because you can't bring up a politician today in this polarized climate without it being controversial. But I also think it was revelatory, because of Patty's involvement. We were able to frankly, because Nancy Reagan was no longer living, we were able to talk about things she never, Nancy never let anybody talk about his first wife. If you want to be Nancy's friend, you never said the words Jane Wyman in her presence.
Right. And she was so protective of his legacy. Obviously, that dynamic would change with Mrs. Reagan's passing. And of course, they're both gone.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
You probably could have the opportunity to do some really interesting exploration, particularly where, I was reading that this is the only project of this type that had a Reagan family member, a member of that very closed circle of family members participating. And as you were saying, you wanted to get some insight into the man. We all know about his presidency, whether we were supporters or, not of Reagan. He's, certainly not one of my favorites. And you're right. Everything now, if you were to run this show next fall, interesting timing. As you said, our times are even more politically polarized than they've ever been before.
Yeah.
Or it sure seems that way.
Yeah, I called it when we were taking it out to talk to different networks about it. They would say, why this show? Why now? I said, it's America porn. He had a life that could only have happened in America in the 20th century.
Yeah.
Whether you loved him or hated him, even the Clintons, everybody always said the same thing. He was impossible not to like him when you were in his presence. Yeah. And he loved the United States of America fiercely. It defined him as much as his faith did. And those two things together made him who he was right up to the end of his life.
So that may happen someday. But in the meantime, then, Tiny Pretty Things is heading to Netflix.
Yeah. Look for that. It'll be fun.
And then you're working on this TNT series, Claws
in its final season. I'm sorry, it's its final season. It's my first one on board, and it's outrageous fun. The writer's room actually is the closest thing to the CSI room I've had since CSI.
Oh wow! Because
anything goes. We can talk. You'll see when you see the show. It's so extreme. It isn't afraid to go anywhere, and we saw how the CSI room was. We were never afraid to go anywhere. We got pulled back sometimes.
You're listening to Mind Over Murder. We'll be right back after this word from our sponsors. Many of you know that Othram is leading the way in DNA testing, helping law enforcement solve missing persons, homicides, and sexual assault cases across the United States and Canada using forensic-grade DNA tests.
You can help this important cause by contributing funds and your DNA profile to Othram's free site, DNAsolves.com. The process is easy and confidential. Just 2 simple steps.
Now DNA Solves has added another new feature, DNA Solves Connect, which will allow you to upload your DNA profile to help law enforcement, even if you've never used one of the commercial genealogy sites.
If you're looking for a missing family member or have lost touch with someone, DNA Solves Connect is an incredible option at only $14.95.
Upload your DNA profile to DNAsolves.com.
Join Mind Over Murder as we help families find answers with Othram and DNAsolves.com.
We're back here at Mind Over Murder.
By the way, influences on the writers of CSI. You asked about ripped from the headlines. We were far more influenced as writers by some of the 1 hour drama that was on television at the time that really wasn't crime shows. It was 6 Feet Under and Mad Men and Queer as Folk. We were more influenced by them than any of the crime shows.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's what we talked about.
Yeah.
Monday morning, did you see over the weekend?
Well, and some of those shows were very much at their peak in terms of, and I'm talking about creativity here too, just, fantastic stories and really interesting things going on. And you're right, you wouldn't necessarily be looking at other crime shows or other procedurals for your inspiration. I mean, they're the competition on some level.
Yeah. I mean, we're all fans of them. Believe me, we watched, it was fun. But we always felt that our show was better. Not every single episode. But, on the whole, we were very proud of how diligent we were about the science and about, when if I would watch an episode of a crime show with my colleagues where someone came on the scene, saw a piece of evidence and picked it up without documenting it first or wearing gloves, we'd go berserk. Still do.
That's not how it's done.
Exactly. Document it in place first. First rule.
And when we were talking earlier about that, that real life situation, which admittedly was terrifying, when the crazy guy showed up at your house and was trying to break in. Exactly. And then, after the police have made the arrest and you're thinking, well, we need to process this crime scene.
Exactly. And I didn't have evidence bags, but, I met through the show, I met a wonderful woman named Astrid Heppenstall-Hager, she's a physician, she runs a lot of things in public health in Los Angeles, but she created a forensic emergency room down at County USC Hospital where she was seeing victims, particularly of domestic violence, children and adults coming in and arrests never being made because a victim of a crime like that, whether it's a rape or a beating, their body is the crime scene.
Yes.
And you want to treat the body. You want to treat the injuries. But as soon as you do that, you're corrupting the crime scene.
You're totally compromising. Yeah. Yes.
And she worked with the district attorney's office and the crime lab to come up with a way where she actually has everybody there is now trained in evidence collection. Mm-hmm. They have official evidence bags and an evidence locker where everything is documented. So the chain of custody can never be questioned at trial.
Right.
And it's led to so many convictions that never would have happened otherwise. I mean, encountering people like that she'd be a great guest for your show, by the way. She really speaks beautifully about her work. But those kinds of experiences and meeting people like that, that's the gift of being able to work on a show like CSI.
Right. How cool. Actually, she sounds great. We'll get her info. We'd love to have her on the show.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds tremendous.
It's funny. We've done a little bit of work with End the Backlog and their effort to work on getting rape kits tested and entered into the CODIS database and so on. And we're going to be talking about a case in the coming months where a rape kit which sat untested on law enforcement shelves for almost 20 years resulted in a significant arrest, and the guy's being brought to trial currently in a case that we're following very closely in Virginia. These kind of situations where it's so important that the victim of sexual assault be handled in a way that allows them to begin their recovery, but at the same time, there's a crime that hopefully can be prosecuted. And it's so important that steps like this are taken. This is an absolutely brilliant initiative. I think that's amazing stuff.
Yeah, it's an amazing program. It should be nationwide. Other hospitals and emergency rooms have picked this up now, but it's still not as widespread as it should be, and it changes lives.
No, absolutely.
It helps heal. Yeah.
It's funny, when I was making notes a second ago about your show, Claws on TNT, and my notes say, I wrote down TNT, Claws, New Orleans. And then I thought, that sounds like a great name for a show. Claws, New Orleans.
That's the spinoff.
So did you ever get to throw down when you're talking to the Bruckheimer people, do you get to throw down wait a minute, we were there first. Those other guys, they don't matter quite as much as we do. Because come on, who put you there?
No.
Really?
No, those guys are our friends.
All right.
I've worked for several producers over the years since my TV career started on CSI.
Yeah.
And I don't know when I've had better partners than Bruckheimer Television. They're fantastic. And when they called me to come back to help Anthony break the story for the series finale, the 2-part movie, I was so thrilled.
No, and that's incredibly flattering, David, for them to bring you back. That talk about decisions in television are not made for sentimental reasons.
Never. Sentiment is expensive. Television doesn't spend the money. Yeah.
They brought you back because they knew you were going to write a fantastic close to that incredible era of television.
Yeah, well, Anthony did the writing. Liz and I just helped him break the story and talk through some possibilities.
You're probably being modest, knowing you.
I don't think so. It's Anthony's baby, and that meant the world to him. What he created changed the culture, changed the way crime is prosecuted, changed the way crime is committed. How many people have that kind of an impact? Now, he had a lot of help. He'd be the first to tell you, but it happened because he was playing poker to make a living while he was in school, grad school, with Daniel Holstein, this night shift Vegas CSI, who also played poker and was a killer poker player. In fact, in an episode that I wrote, I needed to do a backroom old Vegas poker game. And I thought, Daniel's never been on the show. And I got Daniel to play one of the poker players at the table. And that was kind of fun. Since we also had Robert Guillaume as an old Vegas entertainer.
Oh, very cool.
And we had Ralph Waite, Paul Walton, played old sheriff.
Wow, talk about some great actors. There's a lot of horsepower.
It was an amazing day. And I had George Slaughter at the table. And George, many people know, was the guy who created Laugh-In, and great variety television producer. But before that, he was an entertainment director in Vegas. He booked Sammy Davis and Marlena Dietrich and Pearl Bailey and all these people into the showrooms. He had all the stories.
See, I'd want to just, bring George back just so we could go to dinner and hear some cool stories.
Oh, he's the best storyteller. The best.
You got Tippi Hedren for one episode too. What was she like?
That was that same episode. Tippi was great. And I had kind of known her through mutual friends and always wanted to find the right part for her. She played the widow of a casino owner. And this is based on a true story. I read that there was a casino in Vegas that was the first integrated casino in Vegas. And it opened in 1955, I think in October. And it was a big splash, all black headliners, all black entertainment. And because these black entertainers would perform on the Strip and then have to go sleep in somebody's house, they couldn't sleep in the hotels where they were performing.
Yeah.
It was very segregated. Vegas called itself the Mississippi of the West. They were proud of the segregation. But I also found out that barely 6 months after it opened, it shut down like that one night, just shut right down. George Slaughter remembered that they were paying people off in nickels and quarters from the slot machines that they'd managed to cart out in sugar sacks before the padlocks went on, and nobody knew who was locking up or why it happened. Well, what really happened was in those 6 months, the white entertainers on the Strip would say at the end of their shows, "Now, thank you for coming to my show. I'm Frank Sinatra or Marlena Dietrich. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to the best show in town right now over at the Moulin Rouge." And they'd all go over to this club, which was called the Moulin Rouge. And when there are only 5 hotels on the Strip and all your white customers are going late at night to the integrated casino on the north end of town, the Strip casino owners didn't like that. And I don't have to tell you who they were. And it got shut down. Now, here's why I wrote the episode. I found out that the showroom sat there locked up for 50 years.
Wow.
And when they unlocked it and went in, there were still cigarettes in the ashtrays, lipstick trace on martini glasses on the table. It's like somebody just said, everybody out, and it was never touched.
And it's like a time capsule.
Yeah. Wow. So we created that experience we turned the old Tower Theater, movie theater in downtown Los Angeles, into the showroom at what we called the Chateau Rouge.
Right.
And we did a sort of old Vegas, present day Vegas. I made it the Phantom of the Opera. I had an old musician who had played there, who was still living on the premises, and everybody thought was a ghost.
Yeah.
It was a great episode. And Tippy played the widow of the guy who built the casino.
What fun, and how cool to put all those elements together into this really cool story. And even the name of your fictional casino was a tip of the hat to the Moulin Rouge.
Exactly. We called it the Chateau Rouge. And doing the episode brought me into contact with a woman who had danced the original Moulin Rouge. She was I think 16-year-old girl at the time. And she sort of was the keeper of the flame of the Moulin Rouge lore. And I went to Vegas and took her to dinner and heard all the stories. And it was just such a great experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. That is incredible. I was excited about the Tippi Hedren thing, and then you start mixing in all the other elements. This is
so cool.
What a
It's an episode
privilege.
called Young Man with a Horn. And it was our tip of the hat to American Idol, which was enormously popular at the time.
Right. Well, it's so cool. It's funny. For what it's worth, I'll just mention this at the end. David, I'm so thrilled. You reached out to me a couple of weeks ago as a friend, just checking in, and said,
as a fan of Mind Over Murder.
Well, thank you. But we were so tickled by that. And then, I explained to Kristin who you were. And Pamela, my partner, said, weren't you on the Western Council with David Rambo? Is that the same guy? Because, she remembered your name. It's a very distinctive name. And I said, yes, this is the same guy. And she said, well, why did he reach out to you? And I said, well, he was paying a compliment about this little true crime podcast.
I listened to it as Leonard and I take our walks over the hills.
Wow, that's amazing.
Does Leonard enjoy it as much as you do?
He knows Daddy's happy when he's listening to Crime Talk.
Well, we're so flattered. It's wonderful to catch up with you a little bit, and we cannot thank you enough. And I see Kristin grinning on my screen here.
Yeah. This has been so wonderful. I'm having the biggest fangirl meltdown right now. You can't even tell.
Well, we'll have to do it again if Mr. Rambo is up for it.
Anytime. It's so great to talk to you both.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
And we'll look forward to having you again on Mind Over Murder.
And that's going to do it for this episode of Mind Over Murder. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Mind Over Murder. As always, your reviews and comments are extremely important. We'd appreciate it if you'd give us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast site.
Mind Over Murder is a production of Absolute Zero and Another Dog Productions.
Our executive producers are Bill Thomas and Kristin Dilley.
Our logo art is by Pamela Arnois.
Our theme music is by Kevin MacLeod.
Mind Over Murder is distributed in partnership with Crawl Space Media.
You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.
You can also follow our page on the Colonial Parkway Murders on Facebook.
And finally, you can follow Bill Thomas on Twitter at BillThomas56.
Thank you for listening to Mind Over Murder.